talk and then I have to start all.
Hello. My name is Aditi. Everyone, welcome to the Co.Learn Founder Speaker Series. I'm the program lead for the youth program here at Co.Labs, and I'm super excited that you could all make it. So I'll tell you a little bit about the series. The Co.Learn Speaker Series has been built with our friends at Western Economic Diversification Canada to help young people in Saskatchewan become tech founders and employees. So over the past 3 weeks, we've had some incredibly bright founders who've shared their challenges, successes, and helped us understand what the experience of being a founder is actually like. So for our finale today, we have an incredible speaker. And like last time, we'll be doing questions throughout. So make sure you ask your questions right as they come to you. And usually I'm here for just a few minutes before and after the panel to pass along some information. But today is different. So today I'll be your host and your moderator, and I'm bringing you a real treat. And before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So as the youth program lead at Co.Labs, I'm responsible for creating and executing Co.Learn programming. So basically my work is directed at building avenues for more youth to become employed at tech companies and become startup founders. So throughout this process, I've had the incredible opportunity to be mentored by our speaker today, Jordan Duchek, who also happens to be my boss. So Jordan is currently the executive director at Co.Labs, and Co.Labs is Saskatchewan's first technology incubator based in Saskatoon. He's also founded over 15 companies in 12 years. In his current role, he mentors startups, works with various stakeholders, manages our team, and directs us towards our strategic objectives as an organization. And today, my mission is to help you understand Jordan's story, because it's not every day that you meet a 26-year-old executive director, especially one that's as good at his job as he is. And by the end, I think you'll be left with tidbits of information that you can use in your future. And I'm absolutely sure that they'll be helpful for you wherever you're headed next. So once again, make sure to send in your questions using the Q&A function. And with that, I'd like to welcome Jordan. All right. Hello, Jordan.
Hello.
Welcome.
Are we live?
We are live.
So first things, that's really unfair that you brought out my age.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
I spent half a decade basically pretending that I was older, as you can tell by the mustache and other features. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. I'm really, honestly, very happy that you're here today. And I'm actually very excited for the audience because I get to spend almost every working day with you. So I get a lot of your mentorship and I get to hear a lot of your anecdotes that push me through my everyday here, and I'm really excited for them to hear it too. So like I mentioned in your introduction, you've built over 15 startups in 12 years.
And almost none of them were successful except for one that doesn't make money. So that tells you something right away.
That's fine. I would love for you to take us through chapter 1 of your life. So I want to hear about little Jordan in his elementary school days. What were your first ideas and what was your headspace that made you actually pursue those ideas?
Absolutely. So Aditi has given me controls over the PowerPoint. So I'll take us through this. So when Aditi approached me on doing this interview, she asked me to basically itemize all the different components of my career in building companies. And so we decided to put them in chapters, hilarious enough. But, when you hear like building 15 companies, that sounds impressive. But the reality is that through the process, I didn't set out to start 15 companies. Certainly, I, intended to succeed in all of them, and almost none of them worked out. So you don't go into it thinking, how can I be on a podcast one day and look smart because I've started so many things? So maybe I'll take you through chapter 1, if that makes sense. So the first thing I recall, and you can see, the spectrum, the number there corresponds with the grade I was in. The earliest memory I have to being a little shit and thinking that I knew what I was talking about was actually in grade 4. My sister and I, we decided to do a presentation for our parents to essentially articulate why we believed that we should be getting an allowance. Now, of course, it wasn't that compelling because we never got it, but there was a whiteboard in the garage and we just figured, we're going to put some economics on this, and, we're in grade 4, like we don't even know how to use words. But it was adorable. And so that was the first memory that I really can recall, like ever creating a proposition of creating something that was better. And it wasn't necessarily a company, and many of these things aren't necessarily profit-driven companies. Co.Labs is a nonprofit. But I think the common thread amongst all of these is that regardless of whether or not they were about creating money, they were always about being pissed off that things aren't the way that I want them to be and trying to find ways to change that. Now, the second one was literally all about money. So this one was when I was in grade 5, and we had a 20-year-old quad, and it was completely falling apart, but it had a plow on it. And for the first time ever, I created a brochure. I found a link on Google Images, which is a new thing back in the day. And, I built an advertisement, and I put it in like our mail area where all of our neighbors would congregate. And I basically just put a quad and said snow plowing, $50. And I'll never forget, I only had one customer, and it was my neighbor, and they had this long driveway. And so I went to do it, and it was a complete crapshoot. The quad, was severely incapable of doing this job. And of course, like, there's no way I'm doing like a 1 kilometer driveway with a shovel. So I actually had to call my dad to come with like a massive tractor and snowplow to help save me. But that was my first foray into business. I made $50. I probably had to pay my dad like 40 of it just for his gas, but bada bing, bada boom. I was in business. So my second company was called Sales Corp. This was the first like lucrative, we're building a company, I'm going to be Steve Jobs, which of course didn't happen. So this was also in grade 5. And actually, I'm going to show you some images. So this is actually a duotang. I still have this. And when you asked me to, prepare these materials, I went home and I took a photo of it, and it literally says, what does it say? It's like first choice in something for less. And what I did was, I went at the onset of Kijiji and eBay and all these things. I went around my classroom and I talked to all of the people I was in school with. And I was basically like, listen, what would you want to buy for electronics? Because that was, a new happening thing. This is when iPod Nanos came out. Not sure if you recall from your day. But, I wanted to go and see, could I go and procure these things? And could I then sell it to them and generate a margin? And so what you'll see here is I actually had a handful of orders from a couple of friends. Now, I don't think I ever even made a sale, but this is like the first time that I felt like I'm going to be a businessman. I'm going to change the world. Again, really shit idea. But I just, I looked at all of my classmates in grade 5. None of us had money. And I thought, well, if I can go and buy something used, I should get a piece of the action. And I still have that. But that was my first real business. And the last was lawn care. This is the one that built my character. When I was in grade 8, my family, we own the ambulance company here in Saskatoon, and so there was a number of ambulance bases, and my dad was good enough to offer an opportunity to us kids as like our first business to go and mow the lawns for them. And he should never have done it because like it was insufferable to try and get us to do our job, as you could imagine. But I remember one day my oldest sister, I have 4 siblings, they're all older. I'm the youngest, which probably explains a lot. And my oldest sister just like came home from one of the bases with my brother, and she's like, I'm over it. This is bullshit. I'm not pushing another mower. And so I was in grade 8. My dad's like, do you want to do it? I was like, yes. And I did that for like 6 years. And to spend 9 hours pushing a mower, like it sounds inconsequential, but it's a shitty job. Like my oldest brother did a job where he had to jackhammer an entire sidewalk. That's the only job I've heard of that I think is probably shittier. But just
a little bit.
Just a little bit. But like I made money, right? And like it felt really, really good to actually make money. It gave me the freedom to be able to feel like I was independent. And that was really, really important to me, being the 5th of 5 children, to feel like I can do something, I'm independent, and like I'm making money moves when I was actually just pushing a mower.
Right.
And not very well half the time, frankly.
Okay, I have a question. Did you get an allowance? Did the allowance proposal go through? Was it that bad?
In fact, I think honestly it backfired. And one of the anecdotes of that story that I didn't mention was, I'm 99% positive. I was in grade 4, so I can't really recall, but I'm 99% positive that there was actually an MLA from the provincial government who was at my house because we were neighbors in their constituency. And my dad actually brought them into the garage, and they were like howling, laughing, looking at this whiteboard. They're like, who did this? And he's like, that's my children. And honestly, I felt like a degree of pride. I thought it was Stephen Harper. Turns out, federal, provincial governments, they're different.
A little bit of a difference.
But when you're in grade 4, you don't know the difference. Actually, I think I made a comment that I thought it was Bill Clinton, because I thought he looked like Stephen Harper, who I also believe looked like Bill Clinton, none of which is true. But the point being is that it didn't go through, and it was devastating.
I'm really sorry for you.
Thank you.
I wish I could vouch for you now.
That's fine.
But that's actually very interesting. I think it really goes to show that at a certain times in your life, you have the freedom and the capability to do all of these these random things and really just try them out, because you decided to become like the eBay of Saskatoon and like supply your friends with random things that they wanted to buy but couldn't afford.
Well, you know what's really funny is we actually have a company in Co.Labs called Hion. They're based in Regina, and they're literally doing the exact opposite of what I was trying to do in grade 5. So their model is that they have these social consigners who will take all the stuff you want to sell but don't have time, and they will go sell and they'll take a margin. So that was, you know, them taking used goods, selling it on existing platforms, Facebook, you know, Marketplace and eBay and whatnot. Whereas I was going to people and saying just like, what do you want? And them saying, well, I'd love an iPod. And I'm like, I'll go find it for you, right? Like I felt like I was a merchant. Like it was a really stupid.
The merchant of Saskatoon.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So this was like younger. What came next after this? Were you just partying in high school like everyone else? What did you do in high school?
Good Catholic boy I am.
Oh, right.
No, I did not party in high school. And honestly, like I really didn't feel like I fit in high school. And I think that's a large contributor as to why I've done all the things I've done. So I guess we'll move into chapter 2. For me, what was frustrating in high school was I wasn't really good academically. And I mean, keep in mind, I had like, you know, 70s and whatnot, but I'm the kind of person where if I don't think that something's valuable, I really struggle to do it. And so, you know, nothing prepared me for my job here at Co.Labs. And I've learned almost every single thing I do here. But it's because I'm passionate about it and I actually care. And I think what we do here is awesome. I will do whatever it takes to learn it. But when I was in high school, not only did I feel like I didn't really fit in because, you know, I wasn't good academically, but I also wasn't, you know, out partying because first off, you know, Jesus. Secondly, you know, I don't know. It wasn't a thing. And so for me, these outlets of like creativity to try and like think I was going to build Facebook, these were the ways in which I could express myself and I could go and try and like build something. And honestly, I wanted to quit high school so many times and like go do this. So the first thing was a presentation I did at BMW and Audi. So basically my first real job, like I got a T4 and this was my job, was at BMW. And I cleaned cars. I drove cars to the airport, and I swear to God, it was one of my favorite jobs. And I took such pride because it was like, these cars have never been cleaner. And like when people showed up and they were snobbish and whatnot, I didn't care. It never registered to me that like I was doing a job that most people would think is beneath them. Because what I would do is like, I would clean the hell out of these cars. I got to drive them, which was awesome. But then slowly, like I was reorganizing the dealership, and like I got to a point where I looked at the sales model, and like I'm the car cleaner guy, right? I'm not selling the cars. And I got to this point where I thought, you know, the sales process is really inauthentic. It's very sterile and it's not very enjoyable. What if we could change that? And so I made a proposal. This is literally the PDF. I found it. It's not even on my laptop anymore. This is in my file folder at home, and it's called Growth Through Innovation. And the first one was, it's a 3-step process. Enhance the buying experience, utilize technology, and utilize current something. Basically what I was saying was, you guys should get an espresso machine. You should sell in between couches, and you should use apps so it projects on a TV, and, you know, so people would enjoy the process. And I took it to the GM, and he like kind of laughed at me, and he's just like, what? Like, what did he? What?
Like 14-year-old Jordan getting laughed at in the BMW dealership?
I think I was 15 or 16 at this point, but still, it's like, his first question was, what do you get out of this? Right? Like, what's the point? And I just said to him, I was like, I just want to see the change. Like, I just want to see the change. It's like
very wholesome.
But like, people were genuinely confused because I didn't have a motive other than I was just really annoyed that something was not as good as it could be.
Right.
And so this is basically how this played out. He said no. So then I changed the logo and I took it across the street to the competing auto dealership, and I went to Audi, and I actually took this to the management of Audi. And same thing. I got the meeting. I sat down. I took a BlackBerry playbook. Kevin Abeg on the call will howl because he probably has 20 in your office right now. I had a BlackBerry playbook, which, if anybody doesn't know, is the tablet that BlackBerry tried to launch and didn't work out. It's beautiful. It was a really good device.
It was great.
And so I put this presentation on it, and I walk in and I sit down, and he's like, all right, so why are you here? And I'm like, growth through innovation. And I literally start like tapping through. And he stops me like halfway 3/4, and he basically just asks like, what in high hell are you pitching me? And he said, well, you know, this is about like change and growth and whatever.
Right.
And he straight up asked me, he's like, what do you get out of it? And I didn't have an answer. And so I kind of like made one up. I was like, well, maybe like one day I'd like a job. And I started tearing up. I'm 16, right? This is my first like business meeting.
Yeah.
And so I started tearing up and he could tell. And so he's like, you know, here's my card, like call me, this is great. Well, years later, poor Saskatoon basically implemented some of these recommendations. So I feel good about that.
Right.
But I went home and I just like, I sobbed like a baby. I was in my grandpa's minivan, which I took the seats out and I put in wingback chairs. I'm like a 70-year-old man. And so I was like sitting in there drinking tea and my parents came in, they're like, listen, like get over it. Like they just said no, right?
Yeah.
But it was like the first time I ever got shut down.
Right. But that as like a high school student or as like a young person, it's so traumatizing. How did you ever do anything after that? I think if I was sitting in the back of that van crying and sipping tea, I would probably put my head down, go through school and like do anything that would just get me a job.
I'm trying to stare in the camera.
Yeah, I know. Hi.
Hello world. Okay, so here's what I think it is. I was the fifth of 5 children, right? So I never really, you know, got to be the star child. And I, you know, being in that order didn't get as much attention as I wanted. And I think I always had an inferiority complex. But when this happened, it was devastating. And it kind of felt like being shut down on the varsity football team. Like, honestly, that's how traumatic it was.
Were you ever on football?
I was also not on the football team.
Good.
Listen, I was in sports at one point. And so basically I, you know, cried like a little baby. And a couple of weeks later, I got angry, and that anger gave me like momentum. So, you know, it's not sustainable, and you can't use that forever. But for the time being, it was like, you know what, I'm going to show them they're going to eat shit. Like I'm going to do this. Right. I'm going to build a BMW dealership, which doesn't make sense. And yeah, I know. I use that as fuel.
Okay, tell us about your come up. What happened after BMW shut you down?
Oh God, this is so stupid. So this is my favorite story of all of them. In 2000 something, 9 or 10 or something, does everyone remember when The Social Network came out?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
It was a great movie. Really loved it.
It was a great movie.
Yeah,
and the soundtrack is very moving. When I'm like super depressed, I'll listen to it and I feel like melodramatic.
Just like all of us.
Yeah, you like drive around at like 2 a.m. in the morning listening to it. Anyways, so I came out of that theater and I thought, I am Mark Zuckerberg, naturally, as everyone did.
Yeah, of course, me too.
Thank you. And so I basically just found 2 guys that I wasn't really even particularly good friends with in high school. And we came together and we're like, we're going to build a tech company. Wow. This was the first tech company.
Okay.
So this is what it looked like. It's called Business Lane. This is my notepad. On the right side, you can see the very innovative Business Lane logo.
Beautiful.
So this was in grade 10. And basically, you're looking at share distribution, and we didn't even know what shares were. And basically, the idea was this: we wanted to build a website where we could take all of the sales and the deals in our city, and we could put them on the web, and we would get a commission for every deal that happened. Now, ironically, almost every third tech company that applies to Co.Labs, basically pitches this idea.
Same idea.
Honestly,
what do you say to them? I did it, didn't work, sorry.
Yeah, honestly, like, what do you say? Because it's something that has almost never been successfully executed. Right. And it's still a problem. But like, we just came up with this brilliant idea of like, how do we optimize that? And so because none of us were like Hackerman, I learned how to code on Code Academy. Okay. Complete shit. I got to like level 4 and I realized unless I'm talking to people, this isn't going to work.
Right. You can't sit behind a computer forever.
Precisely. So I still have the excerpts of that. And I have like some pieces of paper where I was writing down like strings and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to hack the Pentagon next. Like, the world is my oyster.
Right.
I know how to code. I'm in grade 10. No one knows this, right?
I'm really glad you didn't go down that path.
So stupid.
Very illegal.
So stupid. Thank you. So that was that.
And then we have Color Vandals.
Yes. So this is the third and last company in high school. So after I tried my endeavor at basically a non-company with my BMW pitch, a failed tech company with Business Lane, we came up with the innovative idea of building a t-shirt company. Because I'm not sure if you know, but when I was in grade 11, you know, the t-shirt sector was very underserved. Yeah, like there was so much opportunity. So basically the idea was this, which was, again, not a great idea. If we take Flickr photos, which I don't think people even use Flickr anymore, I'm not sure if it's a thing, but Flickr was like a place where you put photos that you take. And so what if we could take these photos and like just put them on t-shirts and we could, you know, sell the hell out of these things. So yeah, we investigated. Okay. Turns out that the clothing industry is very difficult, and there's a lot of people in it. Who knew? Our market intelligence and market research, which was commensurate with basically 10 minutes of Googling, which frankly is not that different from most startups who start their companies, basically told us that, again, we're going to build H&M and it's going to be $1 billion empire. And I think that one lasted probably about three months.
It's probably for the best.
Yeah, thank you. It was a summer project.
Okay, so you build all of this during high school, which I think, do you accredit that partly to the fact that you had time and like the mental capacity? Because of how light high school is in a sense, especially now that we know what everything after high school looks like. Like, did you want to continue doing this, like continue on this trajectory of let me build company after company, or were you out of ideas? What happened? Tell us what this point was.
Well, none of these were forced. Okay. These all came as a consequence of my environment, right? Sure. Like I watched The Social Network. I became, you know, a billionaire. Didn't happen. I worked at BMW and I decided to innovate. Like, you know, these weren't just like, I need to build a company for the sake of building one, but I won't lie, I was definitely motivated by the idea of independence and frankly, of proving people wrong and honestly making people proud of me and trying to like get the affirmation I never felt like I could in social hierarchy. And I think a lot of founders in tech, especially because it's so hard, a lot of these people are broken people. And a lot of that, no, strangely no, but a lot of that probably does come from the fact that they are, you know, they're unique enough and they are the exception that makes it possible for them to do this impossible job. But commensurate with that is the fact that they probably didn't, you know, thrive in social hierarchy in high school or in university. And so, it was just like using this as a mechanism to pass time because I knew I needed a high school diploma. That seemed to be, you know, an expectation.
Yeah, good base level to start off. Okay, so speaking of university, I know that there's a lot of USask students watching. So as a University of Saskatchewan graduate, what was your mindset going into university? What did you want to gain? Because I know a lot of people, especially who have different aspirations, choose to take some time off or pursue other things before jumping straight in. What made you go straight in?
Yeah, so chapter 1, chapter 2, not that interesting. Where things get interesting is chapter 3. So university just after. My mindset going into university was, this is my shit. I was born for academia in this setting to really challenge myself and to get to start over basically, right? You don't get to choose who you're with in a high school, but in university, that freedom, that, you know, independence, that's all new. And so in my first year, you know, I applied myself academically. I took German, that didn't work out.
Are you sure? Do you want to give us
No, it did not. But like, I tried a lot of things.
Sure.
And, you know, I applied to get into Oxford and didn't hear back.
I'm so sorry.
God knows why. For a 75 average student trying to apply to first year Oxford. But, you know, I just, at the beginning, I had so much like hope for it and promise of like, I'm going to be around these brilliant people. And there were brilliant people there, but I just had this like expectation that all of these things that I was going to find those people and I was going to be able to execute on that. And frankly, you know, my first year and a half was, it wasn't what I expected. A lot of people were busy, you know, building new social circles and out drinking and partying. And I was interested in politics and I was writing like angry posts before Medium existed that should never be aired. We've talked about this. But, you know, I was just like, I was doing things and I eventually actually at the end of year 1, I applied to Aston Martin and Jaguar in England. And I showed you, I found the email, again, I file everything at home. And I found the email where they politely said, like, are you shitting me? Like, you're in first year university and you think we're going to hire you? It was like a procurement position or something.
Right.
But yeah, I just like, again, it was really hard because I felt like, holy shit, I went through high school for this promising university, I get here, and then it's not what I thought it was going to be.
Right. So I think England has something against you, but
yeah, I mean, I'm a monarchist, but yeah, it wasn't everything I thought it was going to be. That's
I'll write the monarchy in email.
Thank you.
I will promise for you. Okay, walk us through chapter 3. Like, how was your university experience?
Okay, so university year 1, you know, everybody's creating social circles, trying to figure out what we're doing. And I actually, in year 2, after the first semester, I walked into class at 8:30 a.m. in, an accounting class, dead of winter. And I was sitting there and I was so uninspired. And I thought, no, I'm over this. I can't do this. And so I literally left that classroom. I walked to the Murray Starbucks, which was like my refuge. That was like my home away from home. And I literally opened pause and I dropped out of university.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, there wasn't a lot of logic that went into that. And honestly, that's probably the most illogical, uncalculated thing I've ever done. But my hypothesis was that, I'm not happy. And I've always had this desire to go and like, just, experience the world as an adult. And I went directly into university. So I dropped out and I had these like grand ideas of like, over the next 9 months, I'm going to Belgium, to Tomorrowland.
England.
I started watching a lot of Dragon's Den.
Yes.
And I came up with some really bad ideas. We'll get to one at the end, but the Ukrainian limousine company, for anyone who
please tell
is
them.
Interested, I can't. It's just so bad. Basically, I watched Dragon's Den. I was like, how hard can this be? And like, this was pre my tech infatuation. So I thought, well, how about this? I'm going to get a limo and I'm going to serve pierogies on it. And I'm literally going to create something called the Ukrainian limousine. There were no investors. And, after about 9 months, I realized, oh my God, all of this like promise of what this was going to be, I literally just worked a job for 9 months. I spent money. I went out with friends. And so come that fall, this is like now my prospective 3rd year, I enrolled in university again. And I thought, you know what, this is where my people are going to be. But here's what I'm going to do different. Instead of being upset or angry that it doesn't suit me, I'm going to go and create the environment that I need in order to thrive. So the first thing is the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And literally within the first month of that new semester, I got back into university and I was going to class, but I decided I'm going to build an organization that allows me to attract the kinds of people I want to meet in order to build whatever I want to build. And I didn't know what that meant. So to demystify for the audience, for those in university or high school or just past, this is literally as simplistic as it gets with regards to my vision. I bought a binder. I wrote down, the committees that the Saskatoon Chamber had that I thought, we could put people on. I wrote a mission statement that is absolute garbage. It says something like, the purpose of the U of S JCC is a pro-business, pro-economic, and community-grown, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's just platitude salad. Right. It's just a bunch of platitudes, and we just, put a little dressing in there. And that's fine, because it wasn't a great idea. But frankly, most people come up with these things and never execute on them. And if you look at the right side of this is the second page of that binder. I literally just started writing down, what are the things I need to do? How can I take what seems to most people to be a massive idea and break it down into its component parts? So I literally wrote down like, email Eileen. Eileen was the president of the University of Saskatchewan. Eileen Boucher.
Did you meet with her?
I emailed her and she replied.
Okay.
And I basically said, President, I want to build this organization and we're going to bring students from all colleges and we're basically going to like innovate. And, later on we found out that that was going to be through hackathons and building technologies. But at the beginning, it was just like, let's get the most weird outliers from each college that I felt like I applied to. And let's just like bring them together and see what happens. And so, you got email Eileen on there. You have email Daphne, who's the dean of the College of Commerce. This is my 2nd year of university, basically. And, I'm just, I was just doing it. Like almost the last one says raffle machine.
You were going to make a raffle machine.
I don't even know. But like the point is that like you just take this grand idea.
Right.
And you distill it down to what are the things I think I need to do in order to even verify or validate, let alone execute if it's actually going to work.
Right.
So that was the start of the JCC. And honestly, that was a huge component of my life. JCC led to us creating what are called hackathon events. So we essentially were bringing together students and innovators in healthcare and emerging or in agriculture to begin with. And the idea was just like, basically, let's bring people together and see if they build technology.
Right.
Right. And, as a general concept, not a bad idea. But one of the consequences of that was my first real tech company. And by real, I mean like there was actually lines of code written and there was a business plan made. And so we called this Co.Labs, and, my co-founder, Kevin Habig's probably on the call. we basically had this idea for like an app development company.
Okay.
It was like you have all these, ideas and technologies coming out of the hackathons.
Sure.
What if we could build the technologies for the companies? Today in Co.Labs, we basically tell companies that's an incredibly stupid idea. Don't do it. Reverse like 6 years ago, that seems like a really good idea.
You wish you could have told yourself that.
Yeah.
Actually, question for you. So about JCC. So one thing that I had to experience, and I'm sure a lot of people that are in university experience right now, is the idea that we should be involved in everything. So there's so many clubs and organizations and student unions and so on that you should be involved in, because when you leave university, your employer looks at your resume and wants to know that you've done all these things, right? So can you tell me what person A, so someone like you that's built organizations and built something that fits your needs and fits what you want to pursue, versus someone who's been involved in everything under the sun, compares in the job market?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Like, if I go back in time, I think it was my second or my first year, I applied to some of the academic and student-led organizations. I didn't get into any of them. And honestly, that's part of the thing that pissed me off and gave me fuel for my fire. Similarly to when I was 15 at BMW and Audi pitching this idea, it was like, oh, wow, they don't think I fit in. Now, like, one of them was a debate competition, and I think I absolutely slayed it. So I thought that was insider baseball.
Right.
So that wasn't fair. But still, you have all these people who go through university and they do a great job academically, and that's what they're told to do, and they join all these student organizations. But when you really factor in how many students have those same credentials, right? We were talking about this, like how many students go to Stanford or have gone to Stanford, right? How many presidents have there been at the Stanford Business School?
Right.
50? 100? Well, okay, so that means there's like 100 people who have almost the same credentials as you. And it's all minutia, but the point is that if you go and do something that no one else has ever done, it doesn't matter if you fail or you succeed, right? If you succeed, you move further and you keep going. You die another day. But if you fail, not only did you learn things that no one else will learn because you went through this gauntlet, this crucible, and you've acquired these skills, imagine what that looks like to an employer, right? Like, imagine somebody applies to Co.Labs and, they really want this job, and, person A was the president of the student society and blah, 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 in 98. The other person tried to build, a failed student group with a really good idea. I'm going to hire that person because they had the goal to go and do something without a roadmap. And it demonstrates, creativity, initiative, chutzpah. Like, they got this special sauce. And I think that's something that's deeply undervalued. But even today, I think we are seeing that right now, there's so many people in the job market, and that's only getting larger and larger. And so many people have so many similar credentials. You really have to differentiate yourself. And one of the best ways to do it is like, go try things, go and, demonstrate that you have the ability to see problems, to, engineer and decompartmentalize all of the things it would take to solve it, and then just go and try. And if you fail, that's fine.
Right. I think to that point, even if you're involved in an organization, if you're part of something that's already been built, sometimes you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, right? You can still improve organizations. You can make them better than they were before you got there. And I think a lot of the times people forget that. At least I know that during times in my university career, I forgot that too. Sometimes you're in it and you're like, yeah, I'm involved in this, but you don't realize that there's change that can happen. And I think part of building things is driving that change.
No, I agree. And everyone's journey is different. Not everybody needs to be a founder. Not everybody wants to be a founder. But that's not the point. The point is that if you do something that anybody else could do, then you are, even if you do it well, not differentiating yourself. And I think that's the lesson to learn. And, in today's job market, we talked about this. I made a resume near the end of my university years, and we might talk about that. But, I hadn't made a resume in so long that I just made the craziest resume on software called Mind Map. And it just looked like this colorful, like pride-themed spider web. And the lady that I sent it to was in Ottawa, and she emailed me and she's like, listen, the portal's closed, but this is the craziest shit I've ever seen. I had to talk with you to see if you were on something or like onto something.
Right.
Who knows?
Luckily you were on something.
Still undetermined.
Okay, keep walking us through chapter 3. What?
All right.
Tell us about CAS.
So CAS, basically, we were taking these technologies that came out of the hackathons, and the idea was, let's build the tech for them. We'll take some equity, and then we'll spin them out. This is basically a venture studio, right? So venture capital funds invest in startups. Venture studios help co-build ventures and then take equity in them. We had no idea that that word even existed. And frankly, I don't even know if venture studios were a thing in 2011 or whenever this was. It didn't work out for a number of reasons, which I don't think are relevant. But one thing that it did lead to was our first proprietary tech company. So no one came to us with this. This was our own. And we called it Yoo-Hoo Inc., which
sounds like a juice.
Honestly, and like it has nothing to do with the idea. Basically, we wanted to map internal buildings, the inside. And so the idea was, well, what if we could take the gyroscope of a person's phone and be able to map out their gait, their walk inside of buildings, and kind of like map out the internal of a building, internals. So, hospitals and universities. And that's great. But a couple of things. One, how do you make money? More importantly, what if you map something out incorrectly and somebody opens a door to like an elevator shaft or I don't know, a staircase that is not lit? Like it was the first time that like I was fixated and I was like, oh my God, $1 billion idea. Everybody's going to steal it. I didn't tell you this, but I have a non-disclosure agreement that I had. One of the founders here at Co.Labs, Riley Arverson from a company called Townfolio, now Refinery Labs, he worked for Futurepreneur, which grants loans to young entrepreneurs. And I met with him at a pastry shop and I made him sign an NDA
for this brilliant idea.
Yes. And I found it. I remember actually when I put it in front of him, I was with my business partner. And I remember Riley looked at us. He's like, you realize I'm under an NDA with the government. And I was like, right. But like Google's going to steal you. So like, I can't trust you.
We're very lucky they haven't done that yet.
Right. So yeah, that's basically, that's basically that idea.
So it didn't work out.
Did not work out. No.
And then?
Okay. So, this is near the end of my university career, and we had built JCC, built some tech companies, Co.Labs, Yoo-Hoo, some other things. But then we got to this point where we had this idea come about. All these companies are coming out of the hackathons, and there really wasn't anything to support them. And so we came up with this idea called Emerge, from concept to market. Well, Emerge is literally Co.Labs. That was the original idea for Co.Labs. And I have the booklet here again. So this passage, I was literally just in a meeting one day and somebody used the word incubator. I think it was at the Chamber of Commerce or something. And we were talking about how do we help early stage companies. At the time, the word startup wasn't familiar at all. No one knew what startup meant in Saskatoon. And so I just wrote down the word incubator. And from there, a couple months later, one day I don't know, wrote out this plan. It's like Emerge Thoughts. And so, we had these stages and we were going to take these entrepreneurs and we were going to give them access to legal and accounting and mentorship, whatever. Well, that's basically what we do at Co.Labs, right? And literally, if you look at Emerge and you like compare it against what we do, it's literally co-launch. It's the same thing. And one of the things I wanted to point out is the page right after it on the right here, this is some of the things I felt like I needed to do. One of the names there, Doug Zielinski, and I'm not sure if Doug's on the call, but Doug is the Director General of Western Economic Diversification Canada. Well, WD funds Co.Labs, and we're incredibly appreciative of their support. I didn't know what WD was. I didn't know who Doug was. And the lesson for me was like, if I put myself in enough rooms with as many intelligent people who share common values, like they're ambitious and they want to change things, over time, there's like these serendipitous opportunities that come from it that you could never manifest yourself. You could never design it. And so like I wrote down his name. Well, 4 years later, WD and Doug, they're one of our greatest supporters and our core funders, never knew it at that point. And Emerge, never knew that Emerge was ever going to turn into anything. I thought like, this is going to be a junior Chamber of Commerce, like volunteer initiative. Like, I don't know. And, you got Mercurture there. Mercurture is our legal partner here at Co.Labs. Like, it's just, you put these things into the world and they may not be the right thing at that point in time. But that doesn't mean that they're not good ideas in part or in whole. So that was a valuable lesson for me. And the last one, oh God. So this is the gosh, this is the behemoth of my failures. So, this company, Printology, basically what we did is, as I was trying to build a merge in what was early Co.Labs, slowly working my way out of JCC, I met a co-founder of mine, and his name was Devin Bradburn. He was in the College of Engineering. And basically, he was working with the head of neurology at the U of S. And what they were doing was, for somebody who had a brain aneurysm, and they were going to do a procedure, they essentially were taking a scan of that person's brain, and then they were using a 3D printer to print their brain to be able to do a procedure as like a practice. And so friends of ours had built a new 3D printing company called Peachy Printer. And it was for like the consumer market, but it was brilliant. It uses a laser that hits like a liquid resin. And the idea was, well, okay, these prints that the hospital is using in these $1 million printers, they cost thousands of dollars. What if we could like augment this 3D printer our friends made, and we could like sell it to them for like $50, right? Like, what if we could democratize this for any patient? And so we entered into 2 competitions that the university had at the time, the Tech Venture Challenge and the Wilson Center I3. Didn't win any money, I don't think. But the problem that we encountered was we had this pilot with the university. We had one customer who seemed to be like, I don't know, the be all end all, like they are the head of neurology. So if they think it's brilliant, the world will. And nothing existed to tell us otherwise. Like there was no Co.Labs, there was no mentorship. We were trying to build that with Emerge. And so what we did is we built a business plan, we built the technology, and at literally no point in time did we ever think we should talk to customers.
Really?
Yeah.
So the exact opposite of what you tell every company here.
The literal opposite.
Okay.
I am the biggest hypocrite on the planet. But here's the thing. The reason why I can tell startups that and, really emphasize is like, I learned the hard way.
Sure.
I spent a year of my life. We went through the competitions, graduated university, Co.Labs was somewhat, kind of entangled in bureaucracy. We're trying to get built, but it was very difficult. There's a lot of people. And so we literally moved into the College of Engineering in one of the student groups' offices. And we were there for probably 2 months. There was no air conditioning. It was 38 degrees. There was no windows. And so that was the happiest moment probably of my entire life. Because I would bike broke with no money. I would bike to the university and I would get there and it was like me and my 2 co-founders and it's like, we are going to build something. Like we're taking on the world. Eventually somebody literally reported us for using university property to make profit. Someone forgot to tell them that not only were we not making profit, we weren't making revenue, right? So clearly that didn't make sense, but they literally kicked us off campus.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, we just didn't have anywhere to go. And I should say, the university has been incredibly supportive of us. I mean, they support us through Co-Launch and other programs. But at the time, we were just, none of this was formalized. We were literally just like kind of like squatters in the middle of summer. So we went into my garage and for a couple of months, it was really bad. Like we were going and now talking to customers and they're like, well, I don't think I'd buy it. And like, who would pay for it? I don't think it's useful and shit like that. And like every day it was like a nail in a coffin that just every day a hammer was hitting it. And yeah, we eventually moved to my garage and then just got to a point where like 12 months in, we spent thousands of dollars. Best education I ever had. But like this shit's not working. And so like somebody's got to stop this.
Right. So, okay. My question for you is, I know everyone hears these incredibly amazing stories about people who were invited into startups, right? And then it exploded and all of a sudden like it was just completely different from your background. So how did you get involved in Printology being a management major?
It was really funny because like in management, I was the least like commerce student.
Okay.
But I mean, in the way that like I wasn't trying to go into accounting or HR or marketing. I was in management, which is nebulous to begin with. And so, through JCC, I actually met my co-founder, Devin. And it was Devin, Eric Tetland, other co-founder, and I. But Devin was starting a nonprofit in the College of Engineering.
Sure.
And that's how they found this technology. And so we sat in the bowl one day in like the middle of summer, and he like sat down with me. This was before my last year of university. And he's just like, okay, so, are we going to do it? I just looked at him and was like, yeah, let's do it. And it was like, billion dollar company, right? Like we're
Right.
onto something. This is a big deal. And we spend time on such dumb things. Like we talked about like shareholder agreements. I incorporated the company. We were talking about, getting a domain in that name. And the one thing we needed to do, which we didn't do, which was actually like go talk to a customer.
Right. So actually that was my question to you. If you could go back, I know a lot of people have been asking this in the past couple webinars. Do you have any validation hacks that you would recommend to someone that maybe you wish you used for Printology and it would still be alive today?
Honestly, identify who your customer is, identify the problem you're trying to solve, and just go talk to them, right? Just go have that dialogue. And the reason why founders don't do it is because they're scared that the answer is going to be no. And yet that's the piece of information that will save you years of your life and thousands of dollars. But we don't do it because we're afraid of hearing it. But it's the one thing we need to hear.
That's a great point. I think a lot of startups need to hear that same point. Okay, so by this point, you're done university. Printology has come to a halt, unfortunately. RIP Printology.
And don't forget, the Jaguar Aston Martin
Yes.
application. I applied to Top Gear to be a host. They didn't reply. And the Ukrainian limo service.
Right. And at this point, you've also resigned as president of the JCC.
Yes.
Can you walk us through the next little bit, very briefly? What happened after university? What did you do?
I was lost. So I had spent now almost 2 years trying to get what is today Co.Labs built. I was doing this while running JCC, while building Printology, and while working and while doing my degree. That was a really difficult 8 months, and not doing any of them well, by the way. And so, I was on this committee to build the incubator, which is Co.Labs. Company ended, and I had no job. I was in debt. Our company shut down, and Co.Labs wasn't a thing. And so I applied, for a job. I got a consulting contract. But, I really was super lost because all of my friends had jobs.
Right.
And I felt like, holy shit, maybe I did this wrong. And honestly, I felt like a loser. I felt like I had done all of these things, and I felt so proud, and my identity was lost when I handed over JCC.
Right.
Looking back, I wish I had done it earlier. And I know that's going to be true for, Co.Labs one day. But the reality is in the moment, it's really scary to leave something of that level of identity. And then as it pertains to a company, how many people did we talk to about that company that would then ask oh, how's your company going? It's it's not a thing anymore. Right. Also, I'm looking for a job if you have one.
Right.
So, I was lost for quite some time. And, suffice to say, I got into contact with somebody at an organization called Innovation Saskatchewan. And, for the years of work that I had done trying to build this incubator, they hired me graciously. Wes Jickling, honestly, he changed my life. He gave me an opportunity to join the team and to basically try and actually make this thing work and to get it funded. So I was there for about 9 months before Co.Labs was, incorporated and became a thing.
That's super exciting. So this is probably my favorite part because in a little bit, that's where I enter all of this. But just a reminder, if you have any questions, we're about to wrap up in a little bit. So if you have any questions for Jordan,
no, we're going to be here all night. Are you kidding me?
Going to be here till 9 o'clock if you want to stick around. But yeah, if you have any questions for Jordan regarding his startups, things that he wish he did better, or about building Co.Labs, we have a couple more things to talk about, and I have a couple more questions. But if you have anything, please let us know now, and then they'll come to me and I'll ask Jordan for you.
Oh.
All right. Okay. So tell us about Co.Labs. How did this happen?
Totally.
I'm very glad it happened.
So this section is hilarious. And it's very quick so we can get to questions. But basically, spent 2 years trying to build Co.Labs. It was like a grassroots movement. We had 4 different buildings lined up. We had 20 different business models. And I have all these different proposals on my file drive, and one's on my LinkedIn that you can go look at. But finally, it was incorporated. And, I almost didn't get the job. And I have to say that our board, who, almost all of our board members are the same today, but especially Carrie Harvey from Innovation Saskatchewan, now the CEO, and Wes Jickling, who was the CEO, as well as, many leaders in the tech community, Catherine Rainier, Ian Meyer, Greg Sutton, Jackie Cook, Jeff Dick for sure. They all, they gave a 23-year-old an opportunity to build this organization. And I think they knew that like I had spent almost 3 years at this point just trying to get it funded.
Right.
That, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, there's a lot of scenarios. But they gave me, you know, the reins, and they literally said like, okay, go build it. And like, we didn't have funding lined up. We didn't have programs. We didn't have furniture, and I was the only employee. And so like my first day, I literally walked in. I remember I went to Best Buy and bought a router and set it up, which even though I worked in IT before, I didn't know what I was doing. And like went to Value Village and bought cutlery. Like that's how scrappy it was. And to move beyond that, you know, Co.Labs was really, really difficult to get started. But once we did, now it was like, holy shit, we actually have to do it.
Right. And
by we, I mean like and if I don't, I won't be fired, right? I've been talking about this for almost half a decade. I need to succeed. And then it became like the ultimate moment of I have to succeed, right? And I had been, you know, for all of these different moments in my life, I had been overlooked or told no. Finally, I fought to the death and I was told yes. And that's a really scary feeling, because now it's like, holy shit, now I have to live up to what they expect. So, you know, Co.Labs, I won't get into it, but you know, where we are today, we're only about 3.5 years old. And in 3.5 years, we went from nothing to where we are. But along that journey, I've never stopped coming up with the idea. So I'm going to show you a couple of anecdotes. This is how Co.Labs was originally incepted. This is like how we mapped out the idea. Day one, we literally bought a TV and, you know, like some paint that we didn't even use. And this is like what the original program looked like, which is obviously not consistent with what we do. Some of the early companies in Co.Labs were like, oh my God, those days. So stupid.
Scarred by the whiteboard.
Just scarred. I'm scarred. But yeah, one of these ideas was in year 2 of Co.Labs, and it is called Bene. And every member of my team guaranteed knows about this, which this is a
very
passion project.
Tell them about it. Go ahead. I know
Bene,
you want to.
as you can see in the user interface, Bene was this idea that every time I travel, I have no idea where I can go and get a good Eggs Benedict. Listen, this is serious. And, you know, there's no good apps, you know, Zomato or whatever it's called, or Urban Spoon, they're all terrible. Google is a liar. And the bigger the city, the more difficult it is. So what I figured out was, what if I could like build this UI where you could see jurisdictionally, like the closest Bennies, but then you could actually rate literally the independent components. So like on the right-hand side, you can see, you know, the hollandaise, the protein, the patty, whatever you call it, the English muffin, and the egg. These are different. These are not equal. And, you know, the sum of the parts makes the experience, but we need to understand, you know, is one hollandaise more lemony than the other?
Important.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad you agree. So Bene is actually in alpha right now, and hopefully over the coming months we can launch it.
Right.
Not entirely sure how we're going to make money, but you know,
if any venture capitalists watching,
anybody watching
would like to
please
invest, Jordan's accepting investment.
Listen, of all of the ideas that we've had, this might be the best.
Really?
Because the world needs this. Chloe's like sitting over there. She's like, yes, you know, I go to Toronto. Where's a good Eggs Benny, right? And like even in Saskatoon, not all Bennies are born equal.
Okay, I'm going to cut your Benny pitch short.
Okay, let's go.
Yep.
So Turnpike, you know, year 3, we basically came up, Alex and I, program director here and co-founder at Co.Labs, we came up with this idea, which was, what if we could like take some of the things that we built here and we could optimize it for all of Western Canada and build like this really unique experience for startups in Western Canada. And like, this is literally how we approach ideas. We literally just go to my apartment. This is my apartment. And we just whiteboard shit. And like, no, they're not all great. Half of them are not. But, you know, we built it. We built a deck. I, you know, got a domain. And we eventually just came to a point in time where it's like, you know, you run fast. You think strategically, but you run fast. And when you get to a point where you realize it's not going to work, stop. There's nothing wrong with that.
Actually, I'm going to tell everyone a fun thing that I've learned while working with Jordan, is that everyone that wants to build anything should get a whiteboard, because honestly, like from what I've seen, Jordan, it is really life-changing, because you don't want something that you're going to write with pen, because pen and pencil can be so permanent. Yes. You need something that can help you think quickly. And when you have the tools like a whiteboard, you can move that quickly. Yeah, maybe not in your apartment.
Like people who come to my apartment and haven't been there before just walk in, they're like, wow, you are a psychopath.
A little bit.
And I just think like, yeah, you know, that's fine. You're probably right. There's a portrait of the queen and then there's like this whiteboard. It's fine. It's my first time. So the last one I'll say, and this is it, is over Christmas, I went on a vacation, forced myself to go for 2 weeks. This was in December of this year, pre-pandemic. And I was in San Francisco, and we went to my ex co-founder's parents' house. It's like Lincoln, California. It's like this 55 plus neighborhood. I hope they're not watching. They're gonna give me shit for this. But like, you have to be 55 to live there. And there's like 7,000 homes. And we were stuck there during the day, and they went to work. So you can imagine there wasn't a lot for us to do. And so one day I just like, after day 3, I was like, I can't do this anymore. We need to do something, but I don't want to do Co.Labs. So we came up with this company idea, which was called Impeachment Peaches.
Okay.
And essentially what we wanted to do is we wanted to figure out, could we build a Shopify website, an entire business in under a day? So I called Alex, who's in Saskatoon. Devin and I were in California, and literally we had a video call. And the idea was this, and like we literally even like created a list of jobs, like Jordan, bank account, incorporate, do math. I don't even know what that means, but the idea was this: if we can buy peaches, like fuzzy peaches, that are candy, and we can resell them, but in a package that looks like Donald Trump, we could raise money for the Democratic Party of America. And essentially we're going to create the structure where it's like the proceeds of every sale of impeachment peaches goes to the DNC so they can launch an impeachment campaign.
Incredible.
Yes.
I actually, off that, I have an audience question for you.
Oh,
so how did you come to accept when an idea was not worth continuing while still having the motivation to start executing on your next idea? That's an amazing question.
Okay, I'll tell you right now. Literally today, I'm working on like 3 to 4 different ideas. This has never stopped. And last week, myself and a couple of friends, we were talking about an idea. We buried it. We spent a week. We trialed it. The key is to really figure out like how do you figure out if it's a good idea? So when you're doing consumer things, especially consumer tech, it's really hard to figure out if it's going to work other than mocking it somehow.
Sure.
So we used a patchwork of other platforms, we put them together, and we just literally ourselves tried it and realized this is not going to work. In other scenarios, like just go talk to your customer. If you have an identifiable customer, go talk with them and ask them open-ended questions, and you'd be surprised not only how open they are, but like what they say. And like that leads to you making that decision. Once you hear it and you normalize this like rejection, and you're like, it's not actually about me, it's about the problem.
Right.
And you focus on that, it stops hurting.
Yeah, Jordan said that to me a lot while I was building the program that I've built, is not to get so attached, because there are things that you can do better every single day, and it doesn't have to be the first idea that you came up with.
Well, half the time I tell you, just like be comfortable with throwing it out.
Yes.
Completely and starting again.
I've learned. But so Impeachment Peaches didn't work out?
No, did not work out. So we also had a loan platform, bad idea, mentorship platform, bad idea. But the last thing I want to say is, this is what Co.Labs looks like today. And because we're in a pandemic, obviously there's not a lot of people in it, but this is what it looks like, 3 years in. But this is literally what I walked in on day 1. Like the roof tiles weren't even in. And like that's my coffee cup. And there was 2 tables.
And this is when you were the only employee?
No, this is like the day after like the board meeting.
Okay.
In fact, I think this was actually before the board meeting. So this is the day I got the key card, and then there was no one here. And I think the point to be made is like, some people would walk in and they would panic. I shit my pants. When I walked in and I looked at this open space after 3 years of like lobbying and building, what do you do? Where do you even start? Right. And I think this is like the lesson that I wanted to hammer on. This is the reason why I took those photos of my journal entries, is like, you only have the capacity to distill down and unpack something that is incredibly complex that no one else could do. That's the only way you're ever going to pull it off. And just be confident enough that like you're going to fail, but you're going to work harder than anybody else. And because of that, even if you fail, you will fail. Oh, I hate this. Forward, but you will find ways to make it work. Because failure wasn't an option. When I walked in that day, there was no option for failure.
I have another question for you from the audience. Out of all of your ideas, how many have you taken to the customer and asked what they thought of?
So it's like perfectly correlated with time. So earlier, no customer validation. Later, pure customer validation. Like the ideas that I pursue now, and I still do, these things, like, I will first, before anything else, just go start and talking to people, because to build anything is a waste of complete and utter time. And here's the worst part about it. When you build something, you build bias. Do you know who the most, well, you know this, the most defensive founders are the ones who have something built and have no traction. So like revenue users or whatever.
Right.
Those are the ones who are the most arrogant and the most defensive. Why? Because they don't have enough momentum or traction to prove their assumption was correct, why they built what they built. But they're also not at day one, and so they have too much into it and like they can't turn back.
Right.
And so that's the place you don't want to be in, the place where like there's no return.
Actually, off of that, I have a question. So I mentioned at the very beginning, Jordan, part of his role now is mentoring founders that are within Co.Labs. So what, in your opinion, makes a really great founder?
Oh gosh. Okay. I think the best founders that I've met are those who are ruthlessly optimistic, those who have a rate of learning that is exceptional, insofar as like you can give them a challenge and they will learn whatever it takes, and like not just learn one thing that exposes them to other things, and then learn those things. And it's like, this is like a network effect. It has a multiplier effect. So, optimism, rate of learning, and I think risk tolerance. Like if you're not capable of taking risks, you're constantly going to be making decisions from a place of fear. And that's just that's not going to work. You have to be willing to, as Sean O'Connor from Connects Venture Capital would say, burn the ships. I actually looked into that. Burn the ships was a anecdote from, I think, like the 14th century when I think it was Cortez. This is probably all made up, but Cortez came to North or South America, and in order to motivate all of his I want to say teammates, but whatever, I don't know, shipmates, he literally burned the ships because there was then no option but forward, right? And so I think that's what a lot of founders struggle with is getting to the point where it's like, I'm confident enough to burn the ships, but it's essential, because without it, the ability for the human mind to perform under survival instincts is different than that of a position of comfortability.
Yes, absolutely.
Different.
Okay, I have another audience question for you. How do you compartmentalize the million little steps it takes to achieve a huge goal that's years away from being complete? So like Co.Labs.
Yeah, I mean, like if you go back and you look at the original list around Emerge and then Co.Labs, it's like, you look at like things in, I'd say, a day at a time, a week at a time, and a quarter at a time. So, 3-month period, because you can't just look narrowly at like what I'm going to do this week or next. You have to think about like, where is it going to lead to? But, I never planned years out. I didn't plan 6 months out. It was just like, even today, right? Co.Labs, we're trying to build something that has non-existed here. And there's a massive opportunity, but it's unknown. And like, there's no rules. There's no roadmap. And so we look, on a quarterly basis, but you just like deconstruct it. Like if you go look at the founding of JCC, JCC was probably as difficult to set up as Co.Labs. Straight up. Yeah. Co.Labs took 3 years, but JCC, the complexity of stakeholder engagement and getting everybody on board and building things like that, there's only so many hours in a day and there's so many things you can do. So they are not that dissimilar. And you would see like email the president of the university next to raffle machine.
Right.
Raffle machine, I believe, if I remember this correctly, was for a networking event where we're going to like, I don't know, take names out of some raffle machine that we found. So the point being is like, you just deconstruct it to what comes in your head. Like, what is it going to take to build this thing?
Right.
There's no good way to do it.
Actually, speaking of the president of the university, one thing I'm sure, especially the young people watching right now, you're always faced with this like stigma of being a young person entering into like this industry or any industry really. So how do you get people like investors, stakeholders at any level to take you seriously as a young person?
Grow a mustache.
Reveal all your secrets.
Yes. Okay, so like this is a real thing, and I don't do these interviews very often, but I'm happy to say it. When I was in university, I felt a serious inferiority complex in the sense that no one especially people, in careers and in positions of authority, no one took me seriously. And I wanted to change that. So what I did was I changed my attire completely. I literally was wearing sport coats on campus. And you talk to anybody I graduated with, they just thought I was like some, asshole who was just like wearing tweed to like, third year accounting.
Yeah.
But I did these things because I wanted to give them no excuse to not take me seriously. And furthermore, I used the opportunity that we had created through the JCC as a platform to go and do things of value with no expectation of return of any kind. And in doing so, now evolve from, oh, that's cute, they're young, let's tokenize and involve them, to, oh shit, like they can get things done, like they've got momentum. And slowly, it wasn't even doing favors, it was like taking on the work that nobody else wanted to, and then flawlessly executing and working your ass off so that you got to these points where like you started building allies, you started building camaraderie, and all it takes is like one to lead to two, to lead to, it's got that growth effect. And so just by doing that, it then had this multiplying effect that allowed me to continually get in rooms with people. And slowly over time, I actually evolved back to the person I am. I mean, like I wear short shorts and kicks and whatnot. And I don't wear suits to work anymore. Probably when we first opened and I was like fixing desks every day and shit.
Just sweating.
Just disgusting. We painted on a weekend once here. Don't tell anyone please that. The point is that, you do what needs to be done in order to get the opportunity to demonstrate what you're capable of. And you, pardon my French, don't fuck it up. And go and execute. And in doing so, you will build rapport with people who will see you differently. And I think that's something that any, person in their university years or even people in their 20s that feel that way, the world has changed. And young people in, the tech sphere in Bay Area and San Francisco have demonstrated that young people have a seat at the table and oftentimes are leading the discussions. It's kind of the inverted, relationship that traditional industries and economies operate in, but it's not impossible. It's just most people don't do it.
Can you talk a little bit to how that relates with founders? Because I know, like you said, industries change so much that young founders are no longer looked at like they're inferior. But tell me, what do you think about tech and young people?
Well, I think, in traditional industries, and this is a tale as old as time, is, young people, they're young. They don't have experience. Like that is a fact. And, most of the people who underestimate me, they were wrong. I don't fault them for it. I just knew that I was capable of more than what they thought. And so, these young people going out and starting startups, it's funny because we talk about like young people being underestimated or not valued in traditional industries. But then when we look at startup culture, it's actually an inverse stigma where there's some serious reverse ageism in startup culture, where people past the age of 30 are looked at as like dinosaurs. Like, oh, how could you ever, like you're not 22 and you don't have like the ability to just pick up and move and do whatever you want. And so I think, it is a great opportunity for young people to start companies, because imagine being a corporation and having, a failed startup CEO applying. You're going to hire that person, right? It took some serious courage to do what they did. But I think, it's a great career opportunity for those reasons. Conversely, though, for anybody who is trying to make their way in, a professional career that's not tech, you're going to face that. But the thing is that 95, perhaps even 99% of your peers are not going to do anything about it. So what are you going to do? And like, I was just pissed off for most of it, right? Like the story of Co.Labs, Jordan was pissed off. But like now, I'm 3.5 years in, that's not okay anymore, right? You get to a point where it's like, you can't do things forever just being motivated by being underestimated. Eventually that might go away, or even if it doesn't, you have to find a different source of energy. And that source typically will move into just pride and enjoyment and fulfillment.
Speaking about Co.Labs, someone asks, having a senior management position like executive director requires a great amount of work and dedication, obviously. How do you balance work and life?
Fun fact, I don't. So, Alex came into the organization about 4 months after I did. He was the first employee. We basically, co-founded and built the entire thing together. For the first 2.5 years, we basically didn't have a life. And, you know, some of the employees who've been with us for quite some time, Chloe, for example, you know, you and Graham are relatively new to the team. They know that like we would be here till like 8, 9 p.m. And what's worse is like every night was networking event. And like there was a lot of weight put on, right? A lot of pizza, a lot of beer. And on weekends were spent getting caught up, right? Because you spend 6 to 8 hours of your day in an executive position of something growing this quickly, this fast, in meetings with stakeholders when they're in office. You spend your evenings doing your work, and then you spend your weekends working on your projects. So like, you know, our conferences or our new programs, for the first 2.5 years, we didn't have a personal life. And honestly, it was a lot of sacrifice. And I'm not complaining. We chose it. It was our decision. But like, it's something that you do wake up one day and you're like, holy shit. I didn't realize we were working, you know, 10 to 12-hour days every night. Right. You know what? I will never complain about it, even though I sound like I'm complaining. People who do the same thing as we did in startups that don't have product market fit and that fail, those are the people I feel bad for. Those are the people who I see myself in Printology, where it's like, you're doing the same amount of work as we are, but you're not, you know, seeing the benefits. And that's why it's so important. It took me 3 years to validate Co.Labs. 3 years. Name me one startup that took 3 years to validate before they built a product. Right? That's crazy. But because we spent 3 years doing it, we had a great deal of confidence that if we put in the effort, that we at least had product market fit, and we could at least count on the fact that it was going to work that way. Yeah, I think those are really great points. So for Jordan's panel, we actually have an extra few minutes because I knew it was going to take a little bit longer. So if you have any last minute questions, type them in. I have one more from the audience before I give you my last question. You haven't given me any of their names. Do I know any of these people?
No, I'm not getting any of their names, but fine. I'm sure they know you. Okay, so which of your startups during high school did you really want to work out? If any, hopefully none.
Oh my God. Okay, so what do we have? BMW, not a startup. Fastlane or Bridge Lane or whatever it was called. Business Lane. Actually, I think it was called SaaSdeals.com, which I'm pretty sure is a company today.
It exists. When Jordan told me about this, I told him that I knew what SaaS Deals.
It exists.
Saskatoondeals.com.
I think ours was SaaS Deals. Anyways,
sure.
And then you had Color Time Bills. Round robin, the answer is none. Because honestly, they're all really stupid.
Sure.
But if I looked at all of them, you know, university included, I actually was talking to my co-founder, Devin, who lives in San Francisco now and is with a med tech company, funny enough. And we were talking about like, what would our lives be like if Printology worked?
Right.
Frankly, I kind of wish it did, but I'm so thankful it didn't, because what would have happened, right? You know, 5 years go by and maybe we make a couple $1 million and this didn't exist. Like, this has generational impacts to our community. And this is such a good use of every member of this team's time. And I honestly, like, I don't think any of them were going to work out, but like the one I love, Benny. And for any of you out there that love Eggs Benedict, you know,
invest now,
because our alpha's coming out and we're raising, you know, I'll see you guys at TechCrunch in the fall.
Right. Okay. Last question before I tell Jordan to go away.
Okay.
Can you give one piece of advice to someone who has founder aspirations, or if you could, what would you say to them?
Yeah. So this is something we talked about the other day. What is the sequence of events that get you to that point? The first thing I think you need to do is you need to create things of value, and it doesn't need to be a company. JCC wasn't a company or a for-profit. Neither is Co.Labs. You know, half the things I did in were businesses. But to create things of value that address opportunities or challenges, because what you'll be doing by doing that is you're literally shooting a flare up to anybody else who is ambitious and intelligent and hardworking. That is how you're going to meet co-founders. Put yourself in these environments. And it doesn't need to be building an organization. I mean, it could be as simple as like run the chapter for like, you know, Coding Saskatoon, Ladies Learning to Code, or X, Y, or Z. It doesn't matter. The point is that if you're not going and building things with nothing in return expected, you are not going to meet people who then at certain points in your career will have incredible value to you. And it's not about using them. It's about like, how can I collect, and not in a malicious or an inappropriate way, how can I collect brilliant people and be a brilliant person for other people such that I'm building like a massive fleet of just amazing people. Because through your life, you're going to ebb and flow. You're going to go in and out of private sector and public sector. You're going to do other things. And so it's really important to have these sounding boards. I was talking to a mentor of mine this morning, and he said something brilliant to me. We're talking about the fact that even as I'm trying to like continue to validate and ideate, I every single day talk to founders. I've talked to 3 founders today. And my job is to coach them where possible. And many of them are way past my ability, but many of them in the early stages aren't. And the problem is that I can't give myself the same perspective that I give them.
Right.
And he said to me something brilliant this morning, my mentor. He said, doctors should not operate on themselves and lawyers should not defend themselves. And I thought that is the smartest thing I've ever heard, because it's brilliant. It's a perfect way to distill down the fact that you need brilliant people in your life, because those brilliant people are going to give you perspective you can't give yourself. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how experienced you are. You need outside perspective, because you can't do it yourself.
Okay, well, with that, thank you so much, Jordan, for being here. I have a couple more things to share with you guys, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope that everyone that was watching got a little piece of what I am very lucky to get every single day. And yeah, like the perspective that Jordan just spoke about, that's the perspective that Jordan gives me, and I'm glad I was able to bring it to you today. So Jordan, say goodbye to everyone.
Bye, everyone.
All right, okay. And I'm back. I actually have a couple more things to tell everyone that's still watching. So I know that Jordan's off screen, but this is actually something directly from him. So as I was doing research and prep for this panel, I came across Jordan's resignation letter for the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And I would love... You're not on screen anymore. And I want to read you a little bit of it. So let me set the scene, okay? Jordan Duchek, January 2016, sitting in the Broadway Roastery on 8th Street in Saskatoon, writing, and I quote, "I often get asked, what are you going to do? So I'll tell you. I've been working with a team on building a technology incubator in the city for the past year, and will continue to do so until it is a reality, no matter how many times we get told no for one reason or another. I may leave and get experience working in tech and in health tech somewhere else in the world to come back and continue building Saskatchewan's technology community, or tomorrow everything will change and I will do none of these things and something completely different. One thing I do know is that I will not let bureaucracy slow progress. I will continue to do what I know is right, and I will work with passionate people to achieve what others believe to be impossible." And actually, after reading that, that's when I wanted Jordan to be here and to be finishing off this series. So if I can leave you with one last thing after this series, it's this. If you want to be in tech, do it. If you want to build a startup, do it. Because the reason that Jordan was the one sitting next to me today is exactly that. He chose to act when other people didn't, and he chose to find a way to move forward even when there were people stopping him. And that's what sets him apart. And I know for a fact that if that's what you guys keep doing and try to do in your future, that's what will keep moving you forward. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We really hope that you've enjoyed the series and gained some value from it. If you're under 30, make sure you enter our speaker series draw for a $100 gift card. It's the same link. Jordan, go back a slide. It's this link that's on the screen right now. And you get to win a $100 local gift card to a local business of your choice. And we'll be choosing the winner tomorrow and reaching out to them. So make sure you keep an eye on your email. And if you'd like to get involved with Co.Labs, please check out our website. It's on the screen right now. And keep up with us at Co.Labs YXC on everything. And if you want access to all of the recordings, they will be available and they'll be released on our social media in the next few days. Coming up next for the Co.Learn program is actually our tech summit. It'll be happening in the fall. So if you're under 30 and you're looking to launch your tech career or take it to the next level, you really can't miss this. We're also hosting our biannual event called Ladies in Tech in partnership with Innovation Saskatchewan on July 28th. So make sure you grab your tickets when they're available next week. And lastly, our applications for our Co.Lunch cohort for the fall are opening in August. So make sure you watch out on all of our socials. And thank you again for joining us, and good luck with everything. We'll see you guys soon.